Let me be clear off the jump that this is not a apology video on Usha Vance's behalf. This is not going to be apologia for her. This is not going to be me declaring my sympathies. I'm not going to be one of the people that's on TikTok comments right now saying, oh, Usha should get back at him, JD meaning, by teaming up with Kamala Harris as her vice president for the 2028 presidential run. I'm not allergic to political savvy, as some people are, who might think that that's a good idea. I'm not on the Kamala train. And frankly, I think Kamala Harris has some pertinence in this conversation as we get into it a bit more. But there is a tragedy going on here. There is something a bit tragic going on. And I think it's okay to admit that. Because when we're talking about the tragedy, we're talking about a big picture problem. It's particularly an affliction faced by immigrant families who want to give their kids a better life and escape the doldrums, the difficulties, the danger of, global South in the 20th century, and end up depoliticizing their children, putting their children on these pipelines for personal achievement, academic success, career success, and in the process, actually leave their kids with a lot of issues in terms of understanding their place in the world. And I can't speak for Usha Vance in terms of what her family situation was like, but I know that she did not necessarily see herself 10 or 20 years ago being the second lady of the United States under a fascist conservative regime. But this path of being depoliticized, of not having a political education, of not being outwardly progressive, and of thinking of moving up the ladder and having career success and a stable PMC, professional managerial class life, has put her on this path where now ultimately she is in what appears to be a really miserable position. And yeah, again, a lot of this is her fault, frankly. But I think we should take some time to analyze why people get in positions like these. And it's not something that just affects immigrant folks. You could be from America, you could be living in the place of your birth, or you could be living, in the place of your, ethnic homeland or whatever the fuck, and still be dealing with these issues because it's ultimately a symptom of neoliberal re-education, of depoliticization, of emphasizing to people that the only thing that they should focus on is their individual achievement, is going to school, getting a great job, having the big title, and even at the cost of their own humanity, even at the cost of their ability to have a connection to their own community, even at the cost of putting themselves under great public scrutiny. So that's where we're at. Lucifer's persona worded it really beautifully. Teaching your kids to become the boot on the neck you're running from is really heavy. Genius stuff, right? That's a really great comment. Yanni says, the vast majority of us born citizens have no idea how strong the assimilation is when you're an immigrant to this country, especially as a child. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of the high achievers in the United States are immigrants, not just Asian immigrants, not just East Asian immigrants, South Asian, African immigrants who come from these middle-class families going to the United States with some level of capital, but not that much, and building a life academically, building a life, building a career. I myself am born of immigrant parents, and I know what it's like to have a household that essentially, if not espousing conservative beliefs outright, pushes you down a conservative pipeline because it teaches you not to pay attention to progressive issues, to keep your head in the sand, to avoid getting into danger or sympathizing too much with the oppressed, and to focus on just being somebody who is respectable in society. All that preamble aside, why don't we talk a little bit about why this conversation is happening? I'm sure you've heard that Usha and JD Vance are not doing great right now. A lot of this is rumors, of course. This isn't stuff that people are declaring on their Twitter pages necessarily. And a lot of this stuff is like, let's say, not the heaviest of scrutiny, right? We're kind of making assumptions. Usha Vance did not dress up for Halloween. JD Vance dressed up as the meme of him with the hair. You know it. You hate it. His kid's also dressed up. And people are asking questions. Why did Usha not dress up? Well, this is especially under scrutiny because there have been recent headlines about JD Vance and his relationship with the recently widowed Erika Kirk. In case you missed it or forgot, here's Erika Kirk talking about JD Vance, introducing him at a TPUSA event. For what, I don't think it's controversial at this point to say that she doesn't seem like she's sincere at all in her emotions. I don't want to be body language doctor guy. I know some people don't necessarily produce a lot of tears. But like if you look at the facial expressions, the like pained pausing, it just seems like a person who like is auditioning for the high school play and is like trying to convey emotion in their audition scene. So you're going through all the usual like performative, I'm pretending to cry shit. That's what it feels like to me.
Do it for Charlie. Do it for Charlie.
Do it.
And I am tremendously blessed and honored tonight to be able to introduce to you a very, very dear friend and his wife. They are incredible. No one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD and Vice President JD Vance. I do. And that's why I'm so blessed to be able to introduce him tonight, because he understands the fight that we're up against. And he can articulate that in a way that transcends race, that transcends demographic backgrounds.
Does it?
He's an amazing man. So please help me welcome to the stage Vice President JD Vance.
So that's the preamble, and she's like, he no one will replace my husband, but, interesting wording. He has the qualities of Charlie. And then JD Vance goes to the stage.
I am honored.
Did we miss this? Here we go. Ugh. I mean, look. Are you not entertained? Look, I'm not going to say that this is like red-handed, you guys are cheating, I caught you, indisputable evidence. It just looks kind of sus. Everything Erika Kirk has been doing in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death has looked pretty sus. There is a significant chance that none of this means anything. But I'm sorry. The level of political scheming that these people are capable of, the amount of like underground grooming that goes into this with modeling agencies under Donald Trump, the amount of performative politics, the amount of focus on views and numbers and culture shifting and all these other delusions that these people put themselves, under, all that shit makes it so that when they do anything sus, you're immediately inclined to think, yeah, they're definitely doing the worst possible thing. It's not like this was the only moment that has led us to think JD Vance might be disillusioned in his marriage, or at the very least uncomfortable in his marriage. It's not as if JD Vance, for one, hasn't proven that he will change his morals and his rhetoric at the drop of a hat. It's not as if JD Vance hasn't proven to us that, he can be the hillbilly elegy guy in 2016 who talks about, the perils of the rise of Trump, all the while lying about his savoir-faire in Appalachia as a young man in a poor background. It's not as if he hasn't proven that he lies about this shit. It's not as if he hasn't proven to be a snake and a careerist and an opportunist over the past 8-9 years as he's risen to this position. Moreover, we've been hearing rumors for a while about JD and Usha not exactly doing great. Just as a reference, a while ago, Usha Vance was rumored to have snapped at JD Vance in public. Divorce rumors kept piling up. This is actually from, it's Suzanne Lambert on Instagram.
Y'all, this was the wrong text for me to get when I'm 2 glasses of white wine in. Cheers, because I'm feeling messy. But apparently, so are JD Vance and Usha. Their marriage is in trouble, and someone needs to tell Jack Schlossberg. I just got this text from my friend who is staying at a very nice place, redacted for obvious safety reasons, and apparently, JD Vance and Usha had also been there recently. My friend said despite it being in a super conservative rural area, most of the staff of this place are liberal twinks. Love that. And they were down to give the tea, honey. Oh my god. So to absolutely no one's surprise, they were rude and miserable both to the staff and to each other. So I can officially add them to my list of confirmed Republicans who are rude to wait staff. So they were fighting at dinner, which, like, number one, messy. My grandma always said you never ever gossip or fight in public, and especially not in a public restroom, because you never know who's in there. Keep that in mind. But apparently Usha said this is what our life should actually be like, and he, to no surprise to anyone, was just like a little meager beaver, like me, I know, which confirmed.
So Usha Vance is yelling at JD Vance in public, this is what our life should be like, as they're at this nice hotel. If you don't know their story, they went to law school together at Yale. And this is in this period of time where JD Vance is hillbilly elegy guy. I have this interesting story. I'm from Appalachia, and I definitely have hillbilly street cred. I have this interest in politics, but I want to bring people together more than I want to tear people apart. I'm actually writing a book, and in 2017, my book will get adapted into a film, which portrays JD Vance and Usha Vance. There's somebody who plays Usha Vance in the movie, right? So this is one of multiple things. There were also rumors that Usha Vance was not happy with JD Vance getting the vice presidency nomination and told him not to receive it. Some people are commenting on her appearance, because why not comment on a woman's appearance? It's all we do on the internet, right? That's just a part of society. But there are people that have noted that she looks like she's aged significantly over time. These are the kinds of things that have surrounded their marriage for a while. And so yes, a lot of this stuff is pretty light and tentative, but I want to particularly bring attention to, I think, the main reason why people are extra sus on JD Vance. Obviously, as you know, the MAGA coalition is a very white supremacist one. There's a lot of white supremacist Christian nationalist sentiment that drives the base of this political coalition. And in particular, a couple of days ago, JD Vance gave a speech right around when he also did this suspicious hug with Erika Kirk, saying that he does want his wife to become Christian.
Fair to say that she grew up in a Hindu family, but not a particularly religious family in either direction. In fact, when I met my wife, we were both, I would consider myself an agnostic or an atheist, and that's what I think she would have considered herself as well. You know, everybody has to come to their own arrangement here. The way that we've come to our arrangement is she's my best friend. We talk to each other about this stuff. So we decided to raise our kids Christian. Our two oldest kids who go to school, they go to a Christian school. Our 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago. That's the way that we have come to our arrangement. The only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions as a family unit. For us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important...
So you get the picture. JD Vance, using diplomatic language, is saying, yeah, of course, as a Christian, I hope my wife eventually sees the light and becomes a Christian, but I won't judge her for that, and God has a plan, and da-da-da-da-da. I have also seen, April, that Hindu nationalist groups are mad at this, realizing that MAGA people are not their allies. A lot of the coverage that has been of this has been from, like, more Hindu nationalist affiliated publications, in which the comment sections are like, you see, the West thinks that they're so superior to us, but look, the Abrahamic faiths are XYZ, and then they'll tie it into hating Muslims. It's a whole thing. I think it is a quite disrespectful thing to publicly say, or to say in private to your partner, yeah, I do hope you convert to Christianity. I get that some people are like, well, you know, that's just part of being in a religious faith. That's just what it's like. It's one of those things that's almost just so outdated, and especially like doesn't convene to like what we talk about in secular spaces, that it's hard to understand. But one of the things that really fascinates me about this is that Usha, who is not a very public person, has been praised by many on the especially more moderate right as somebody who is a representative for women everywhere, for mothers everywhere, somebody who is well behaved, quote unquote, somebody who is an educated role model of a person. And JD and Usha's marriage has previously been talked about, again in these moderate right-wing spaces, as an exemplar of interfaith marriage. I just need you to go with me here for the next 30 minutes, because I don't think I'm going exactly in the direction that you think I am, but I also think that we have ample reason to kind of get critical of people and their performances of grief, men and women. This is something that I have given plenty of men shit for in the past. If you'll recall, I've had multiple streams talking about the outpouring of sympathies and anti-violence sentiment from even left-leaning or apolitical people. I talked about, you know, Charlie, the moist critical guy. I talked about multiple people doing that. I am also going to take a critical eye to Erika Kirk's behavior and demeanor as she peddles white nationalist rhetoric with a bunch of her white nationalist friends and dangles her marriage and her widowship with Charlie Kirk as a carrot in front of these hordes of people, as something that can put her in this position of this, you know, Christian wife superstar position at this head of Turning Point USA.
He understands the fight that we're up against. Do it for Charlie.
This is obviously performative politics because these are politicians. And that's why it's not the same thing as if I were trying to scrutinize some sort of celebrity, some sort of famous woman who's just an artist, who's just a writer, about how they're grieving their husband. I know it's sensitive, and I know that it can definitely delve into misogyny. I've seen it done in several spaces online. I have plenty of issues with the online left. It's not something that you can just say, feminism says this should be done. That's not how feminism works. Feminism is a very rich tradition in which many scholars disagree. In fact, it is the fact that she is performing this gendered performance of grief that is mobilizing people to support her on the far right in furthering these policies that are ultimately anti-woman. And yeah, it's going to look a little bit sus when you're doing that and you're not exactly doing it in a way that looks convincing to people. And at the same time, you're christening this man who is in this very controversial interfaith marriage within the right wing as somebody who is much like your husband, and then giving him a weirdly intimate hug. That's not to say that she doesn't feel any grief, but I would never critique your average woman about how she looks like when she's grieving, but I will critique Erika Kirk. Anyway, where were we? I will say that this is a fascinating development in the JD Vance, Usha Vance relationship, because prior to this, a lot of right-wingers and centrists, especially ones who are not Trump supporters, have looked at their marriage as a great example of an interfaith marriage and have looked at Usha Vance as this great role model. In particular, I was watching this interview that Usha did with Meghan McCain. You guys know who Meghan McCain is, right? Daughter of John. She's also an avid anti-Trump right-winger. She's somebody who wants to bring back the sort of decorum and dignity that she proclaims her father brought to the table with the Republican Party. You should look up John McCain, Bomb Iran for some more context on that. But here are particular parts of this interview that I thought were interesting. And they're talking about how JD Vance, who was atheist when Usha and he got married, when they met, everything, converted to Catholicism and what that process was like for them.
Well, at the time when I met JD, he wasn't a Catholic. He converted later. And when he converted, we had a lot of conversations about that because it was actually after we had our first child. Maybe it was after Vivek was born, too. I'm having trouble placing the date now. But of course, when you convert to Catholicism, it comes with several important obligations, like to raise your child in the faith and all of that. And we had to have a lot of real conversations about how do you do that when I'm not Catholic and I'm not intending to convert or anything like that. So I actually think it was a really helpful thing to happen because we were obligated to have those conversations as a part of his conversion. And it felt like I could be a part of it and have some, say over the way that the direction our lives were going. And
she says that, but, JD Vance, for one, he's not necessarily converting to Catholicism like anybody might convert to a different religion. That's an important part of this, right? JD Vance converts to Catholicism en route to becoming a major Christian nationalist politician. You would have to be very naive to think that there were not significant political implications on the way, especially seeing how JD Vance has leveraged his Catholicism as something that makes him the person that he is, as having these Christian values, as having seen the light, right? And they raised both of their children in the Catholic faith. That's the decision that they made. Usha's still, polite as she is, saying, oh, well, I had the opportunity to have some say in this. But imagine the horror. You go to law school, Yale Law School. You're just trying to make it. You're just trying to build up this big fancy career in bipartisan, centrist political law work, legal work. And you've got this man with you who makes you laugh, who's got this pretty centrist, center-right political affiliation, seems nice. He's atheist. And then all of a sudden, he's building this political career. He's putting out this book, and then he's converting to Catholicism after you've had one, perhaps two children. I just want this video in part to be a referendum on getting the divorce. Get the divorce. Don't worry about leaving the kids. Don't worry about abandoning the kids. Get the divorce. Women out there, if you're watching this, get the divorce. Some of y'all are not even women that need to hear this. Just keep that in mind. Second of all, it's really startling because you see that she handles herself with this composure, and you see that when you hear her talk, she's like the model of what your parents wanted you to be, especially if you're an immigrant kid like me. She went to Yale Law School, she married, she got into this very powerful relationship, and she has all this dignity. She doesn't speak very much, and when she does, she speaks politely and with decorum. This is the kind of person your mom wanted you to be, Evelyn. And yet, look at the position she's found herself in. If you think critically about it, it's really kind of a nightmare. It's really kind of a tragedy in that she's done all the right things according to the manual we were given. And it's put her in this position where her husband has turned into this monster. And of course she has some culpability in that, for not saying no, for not turning away, for not being discerning, for not caring about politics, and turning away from all the possibilities, even at the beginning of the relationship, that this guy you met in Yale Law School, this white man who clearly is a little bit in over his head and a little bit precocious and using his background to a certain degree, often manipulating people about it. Think about, like, I don't even know where I was going there. But like, as Lucky Girl says in the chat, you don't marry any version of JD Vance without being right-wing. And it's worth noting that this Usha Vance is also somebody who worked under Brett Kavanaugh and worked under John Roberts for a year or so. She worked at a firm, though, that had some progressive values, and at one point was a Democratic Party voter, up until like 2016 when her husband really gets involved in politics. So you have this person who doesn't really care about politics, doesn't really care about progressive values, only focuses on what's important. And again, look at the position it's put her in. Let's continue the answer.
So what we've ended up doing is we send our kids to Catholic school, and we have given them each the choice, right? They can choose whether they want to be baptized Catholic and then go through the whole step-by-step process with their classes in school. And so far, our oldest child has done that, and we'll see what our second child does.
Do you think that's really a choice? I went to Catholic school as a kid, like up until the point where I had to do my confirmation and I just noped out of it because it was extra work and I was lazy. I was doing all the Catholic shit too. I was doing my confessions. I was eating the little piece of bread. I was doing all that stuff because my parents wanted me to go to this school. They weren't even Catholic themselves. They were Christian. They wanted me to go to Catholic school because it had a certain level of esteem. Your kids, the children of, mind you, the Vice President of the United States, who is constantly proclaiming the importance of Christian values and who converted to Catholicism very famously, they don't really have a choice. You're not putting them in Catholic day school and Hindu night school. You're not putting them in a public school and giving them the same level of education and background in either faith. So all this talk about, well, I had a choice and I had some say in it, and my kids have a choice and they have a say in it, it's not really matching up to the reality.
But we make going to church a family experience. The kids know that I'm not Catholic, and they have plenty of access to the Hindu tradition, from books that we give them to
that's good.
Things that we show them, to the visit recently to India and some of the religious elements of that visit. So it is a part of their lives, and they know many practicing Hindus as a part of their lives in their own family.
Do you celebrate like
this is actually
Diwali
good too.
or Holi with them? Any of like the traditions?
We haven't. We're actually hoping to have a Holi party, so we're looking forward to that next year.
Beautiful.
I think they would love it.
No, I mean, you can explain it. It's a beautiful tradition.
Yeah. No, I think it would be a lot of fun.
And notice also how different this is from what JD Vance has said just recently. She's up here saying, I had all the say in it. We just have decided that our kids can choose the faith that they want. They're in Catholic school, whatever, but they're also exposed to a lot of Hindu, stuff. They know a lot of Hindu practicing people. They have the opportunity to engage with that more. And I have no intentions of converting. I didn't feel any pressure in the process. Fast forward to October 2025, and JD Vance is, I hope my wife turns Christian. Obviously, I'm not going to divorce her or anything. Shit's pretty cool otherwise, but like, obviously, as a Christian, I would like my wife to be Christian. Does that sound like they're on the same terms? Does that sound like a situation where he has so much respect for his wife's religious practices? So another thing that really interested me is that they talk at one point about Meghan McCain's sister, who was from Bangladesh, who was adopted, and how that had brought some controversy to their family. Usha gives some perspective on that.
Asian Second Lady of the United States, do you take the responsibility and the role? Is it a lot of pressure? Because so many of the South Asian women in my life really admire you, really look up to you, and just find, honestly, seeing a mixed family so refreshing at this level in our country.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear that about your sister.
She's fine now. Thank you.
People can be awful, so.
Yes.
And Usha's saying this from the perspective of somebody that people have been awful to. There's also, I had some stuff about Vivek Ramaswamy. Let me not get into that super quickly. This was in July of 2024. JD Vance's wife, Usha Vance, what did I say, Vance? Usha Vance has faced racist online backlash from far-right social media posts. And it's not just her. It was including RNC Speaker Harmeet Dillon. Trump himself, they're quoting him saying they're coming in from every corner of the earth, not just from South America, but from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. They're coming from everywhere, and this administration does nothing to stop them. We all know about his rhetoric about race. We all know how Vance in 2016 said the Trump people are certainly more racist than the average white professional. Between January 1st and August 11th of 2024, 1,800 unique public social media attacks in the year to date on Usha Vance. 16,000 public social media attacks, shares, and replies year to date. Insinuations that their son Vivek Vance was named after Vivek Ramaswamy. Quoting Nick Fuentes criticizing Vance for having an Indian wife. 13% of public posts. Accusations that Usha Vance has ties to Hindu nationalism. You guys don't realize it, but that's good for y'all. You need that coalition. You need that Modi coalition. Stop dunking on her for that. That's like half of your bread. Nicholas J. Fuentes, famous far-right influencer who has been talked about a lot recently. JD Vance's wife Usha was not raised Christian and is not a Christian. What kind of family is this? I love Trump, but what the fuck is this? JD Vance has an Indian wife and a son named Vivek. This is the guy that's gonna stand up for white people? So as Usha is talking to Meghan McCain about this racism that Meghan McCain has seen happen to her family and friends on behalf of these far-right people, Usha's not coming out and being like, I denounce that shit, I deal with that a lot, this guy Nick Fuentes is a piece of shit, whatever. She can't do that, okay? Because she doesn't have the agency that she'd like you to think she has. She has chosen to marry this man. She has stayed with this man as he's completely descended down this far-right pipeline for fucking opportunity. And as she tells you, she has all this choice and all this respect in her relationship over her faith, she can't even publicly denounce these things. Of course, she might have a mentality of, if I don't engage with it, it's better that way. But literally, you have Meghan McCain, who is an anti-Trumper, one of the few people you've tellingly chosen to speak to publicly, telling you about racism against Indian people, giving you the opportunity to talk about it. So what is Usha Vance going to say,
But to answer your question, I don't feel a lot of pressure necessarily on a daily basis, but I am pretty well attuned to feeling pressure when I meet with older Indian people and they kind of give me that look.
I was wondering
reminiscent of a parent or grandparent. And so I have heard from a lot of people how proud they are and how excited they are for this, and that does give me a little bit of a sense of purpose, a little bit of a goal to live up to their expectations and to do this well. But for the most part, it's frankly just not really been an issue. It's not been something that people are hyper-focused on. I don't know why. Maybe we've just sort of moved beyond trying to count firsts of everything, or I'm not sure.
It's not been an issue. It's not been something that people are hyper-focused on. She's very careful about how she addresses it to be like, maybe people don't care that much that I'm the first Indian second lady. What about the racism you're experiencing?
And so most of what we're thinking about is just how to do the best job writ large, right? How to be
What does that mean?
Good parents, how to
be good parents,
represent the country in a way that we can be proud of, how not to screw up and do something embarrassing on national television.
And she's so careful about how she portrays herself, how she allows herself to be portrayed, in the sense that she doesn't give people very much. She wants to be as private as possible, which is kind of the opposite of an Erika Kirk. This is a person who clearly is not particularly interested in building a huge political platform and a huge following. And so these rumors that she was very opposed to this are even more founded based off of that, right? This is the situation that you put yourself in when you don't learn early on about how important it is to be mindful of white supremacy, of how important it is to be interrogative of what we consider conservative values in the Republican Party in this country. And frankly, one of the things she talks about is how important it was that her and JD had kids. That was one of the reasons they got together. One of the reasons they got together and they recognized each other as a good fit is because they both wanted to have kids. What does that even mean? You want to have kids? Why? What about what you want to do with your life? None of your business. Says she knew exactly who he was when she married him. I'm only sorry for the kids. And I don't know how to feel about that because in a sense, you're right. You had all the signs there. It's clear that he changed a lot, especially in his public persona. But you knew this person intimately, And you saw him continue to shift more and more in that direction, align more in that direction. And you continued to stay by his side. And maybe it's because you felt that pressure to remain the wife of JD Vance. Maybe it's because you felt that pressure to not disrupt something, to not be the disruptive person, to not, get a divorce, to not mess things up for the kids, all these things. But this is what happens again. When you have this upbringing that tells you, don't worry, if your husband is white and he's right-leaning, that's fine because everybody can come together. And, oh, don't worry, interfaith marriages are totally fine on the right. It's totally fine to assimilate into white people's business and to assimilate into their religion. It's totally cool. There is never any mindfulness that you need to have about that. Do you think about that? Like how dangerous that is, to not let people know as kids, to not train people in, hey, we come from India. We come from a place that was under the violent boot of colonization. We have dealt with white supremacy firsthand. We have a history of dealing with white supremacy. People are going to judge you on that behalf, and a lot of people are not going to see you fully as a human being, even though they will look like they are at first. Because when it comes down to it, your Hindu faith will not be respected, and you will be put continuously in a position of being scrutinized unfairly, of being beat up, essentially, by these spaces. And your husband will not protect you from that. Your husband will ultimately not stick his neck out for that. And I think JD Vance is probably a person who talks out of both sides of his mouth and who says nice things and who tells little jokes to diffuse the situation and to avoid having to take accountability, to avoid having to decide whether or not he's actually this MAGA right-wing fascist Christian nationalist, or whether he's this super chill guy who has an interfaith marriage and who loves Hinduism and all this stuff. But it's so clear from the outside who he is. That's where, what you've said earlier makes a lot of sense. I forgot your name in the chat. That's where ultimately she has to be held very accountable, and you cannot sympathize with her to a degree that makes you forget how much accountability she had in this. You married a man who has no backbone and principles. You rushed into having kids with him. You looked away as he continuously had all of these misgivings from the start. You looked away as he was deceitful about his background. You looked away as he was continuously backtracking on his political beliefs. You looked away as he was continuously opportunistic. Because to you, that wasn't the kind of thing that should separate a marriage. In fact, much of that is a part of the American dream. Well, how's that American dream working out for you? That's the tragedy of Usha Vance. It's not a tragedy of her being this good person in this bad situation. No. Usha Vance can say absolutely zero for the rest of her life, and she still should be taken into account for being in league with white supremacists, fascists, who have ruined the lives of countless people in this country and outside of it. You're married to a man who is committing countless war crimes in Venezuela, who's committing countless crimes against humanity, against his own people, for the sake of border protection and fighting the woke and all that bullshit. You are married to a man who is a white supremacist. And a lot of folks, they don't think that that's a line. A lot of people don't seem to think that's a line. A lot of women are trained to think, well, our politics can differ, and not understand how politics differing is one thing. White supremacy is another. It's not like, my wife is more of a democratic socialist and I'm more of a social democrat. That's not what we're talking about here. She and I disagree about modern monetary policy. I still have some faith in Keynesian economics. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a man who will continuously sell you out, and now you're dealing with all this bullshit, and you're yelling at him in hotel rooms. And the entire coalition that has built this American dream that you're supposedly living despises you, wants you out. Even the right-wingers that are anti-Trump are not a part of your coalition. You've signed a deal with the devil, and you don't even believe in him. Again, this was a huge part of JD Vance's whole mystique. Look, me and my family went to St. Cloud Diner. We went to this nice diner with these salt-of-the-earth Americans, and here I am with my wife. Here I am with my wife and our kids, and we're beautiful. Look at this public appearance we're doing. Comments: daughter sticking with dad, son with mom, whole family together. So good to see family values on display. I love Vance's wife. She is so humble, smart, classy, and so beautiful. Well, look at what they did to her. Look at how they're doing her. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories, again, about, given the Erika Kirk moment we saw earlier, is JD about to set up Usha to get kicked out of her position? Are they going to get a divorce? Are they going to do something nefarious? Some sort of conspiracy theory thing? I don't know. It's obviously something that seems absurd, and yet absurd shit happens every single day. I don't know what's absurd anymore. Knowing the kind of political opportunism these people are constantly doing, No, it would not shock me if Erika Kirk, who just compared J.D. Vance to her dead husband and said, nobody can replace him, but he shares a lot of the same values, and then held him and petted his hair. No, it would not shock me entirely if Erika Kirk ended up being J.D. Vance's second wife. She fits the bill more for this MAGA agenda. She fits the bill more for this fascist agenda. That's not nothing. These people are political opportunists through and through. Through and through. Moonchild Mari says, what pisses me off is it feels like he gets something by being married to her, even if it does reflect badly on him to some right-wingers. I think the play for him in his mind is, if I have an Indian wife and an interfaith marriage, I can normalize white nationalism and fascism. The same way that you see these women heads of fascist states, in Italy particularly, women at the head of fascist parties in Germany. The same way that we see, woke fascism proliferating with all the different Indian folks, Leave it to caste system to give us all these fucking well-to-do Brahmin Indian Americans assimilating into literal white supremacy. You saw what happened with Vivek Ramaswamy, right? I had mentioned him earlier. You saw what happened with Vivek Ramaswamy, who was a part of that triumvirate, a part of that administration in league with Doge and in league with Trump at the very tip, the very beginning of this administration. And then it was essentially ousted. He just shared a photo online with his children on X. And he got a response saying, "It's Reformation Day. Repent and declare Christ Jesus your Lord and Savior." I don't know if you guys saw this clip either. This is on Times of India.
Do you think it's inappropriate for someone who's a Hindu to be, say, a U.S. president?
No, I think it's... No, well...
You be honest.
Isn't Hinduism... Well, I mean, I can ask yourself that Hinduism...
This is him doing a Turning Point USA
Shiva
event.
And,
Notably, Erika Kirk did not have the same spiel for Vivek Ramaswamy.
The flute... God, I forget.
Right, Krishna, who's you're thinking of.
Yeah, Krishna.
So the one thing for you to take away from, about my faith is, I'm an ethical monotheist. I believe in one true God, the Advaita philosophy of Vedanta. And I think that as you think about...
This is the people that you aligned with, your coalition that you built with Elon Musk and them. Look at the people on his app and all the racist abuse that they're sending your way. Vivek is an example of somebody who has angled very hard to be a leader in that coalition. That's not going to happen. They don't want you. They don't want you. They don't want you. You at best will get a peripheral role to help give legitimacy. That is what we call tokenism. If you were well acquainted with woke ideology, you might have heard about it before. And what about all the, Latinos for Trump and all those other people, right? Classic examples, again.
A wave of disappointment. One of President Donald Trump's most loyal voting blocs, Cuban and Venezuelan immigrants. Now speaking out in Miami, a Republican stronghold, as the recent wave of deportations hits home and the Trump administration moved to end temporary legal status, or TPS, for more than 500,000 people who arrived during the Biden administration. Elena Conde says she came here from Cuba on humanitarian parole in 2023. Her husband, Ariel Lara, crossed the border with Mexico twice, once in 2019 when he was detained and deported, and then again in 2022. 6 weeks ago, he was taken into custody at his residency hearing.
So he was given an appointment to go to ICE. You told him before he left for that appointment, you don't have anything to worry about. You haven't done anything.
Instead, he was transferred to Texas, where we spoke to him from his detention center.
Ariel, ¿qué piensas sobre lo que está pasando ahora en este país, en este momento con respecto a las deportaciones? How do you feel about everything that's happening right now in this country with the deportations? You don't understand how this could happen. ¿Qué pensaba que iba a pasar cuando ganó Trump? What did you think was going to happen when Trump won? You're saying you believed the president when he said he was going to deport criminals.
Do you understand? I know that the fuck around and find out people have driven this story into the ground, right? But it's just a classic example of how, again, immigrant families... Oh, my frame rates have dropped. Do you understand? This is the American dream. This is the thing that immigrant families taught us to do, right? They taught us that America is this beautiful place where criminals get deported and not good, hardworking, honest people. They taught us that it was this place where anybody can do anything, where interfaith marriages can prosper and you can make this money and you can assimilate. And they taught us, very importantly, how much we needed to assimilate. Well, the assimilation hasn't happened. We're all these years in. We've chased this American dream, and the assimilation continues to be down the road. It continues to be a pipe dream, an American pipe dream, if you will. And somebody like Usha Vance did everything right according to this playbook. She didn't even pronounce herself as a political person. The same way that many Asian families, East Asian, South Asian, West, North, who immigrate to the United States with some degree of class mobility in mind, emphasize to their children, do not get involved in politics. In fact, there was a TikTok that I saw a while ago that I'd actually talked about recently, which gets at the heart of this issue very well.
A lot of Asian Americans are raised with this idea that you should be solely focused on making money and having nice things, and not pay attention to anything bad that has ever happened in the world. And it's understandable where this comes from. I think a lot of us who are the children of immigrants, or maybe the grandchildren of immigrants, were raised with this idea of like being told over and over how lucky we are to be where we're at, being told that there are horrible things that you get little snippets of, that like your parents or grandparents, these are the horrible things they went through. Horrifying war crimes, starvation, chemical agents being used against them, like just so many horrible things. It's horrifying abuse in their own families, maybe. But you get little snippets of these things and you're told kind of about them, but you're also really trained not to dwell on them because whoever it is who went through it doesn't talk about it. Like, I think this is a very common experience for your grandparents, your Asian grandparents who went through horrific abuse or just horrifying trials of humanity, not talking about their experiences, and everybody else in your family kind of being like, yeah, this happened and we're here. Like, kind of move past it. Yeah, that it was really hard for her and she doesn't want to talk about it, and she hasn't talked about it for 50 years. But you're trained to just kind of know about it and recognize that my parents or my grandparents came here and pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, and they came here with nothing, and they didn't take help from anybody. They just worked hard and made money to put me through college, and so I need to go and be grateful that I will never have to go what they went through, but also not really think about it at all and not really pay attention to it and never bring it up to them and act as if it never happened, because what they want from me is to go on and make a lot of money and live the life that they wish that they could have lived, because they were born in such horrible poverty and under such difficult circumstances for so much of their lives.
This is the kind of thing that we are taught about, our patrias, our home countries, the places that our parents immigrated from. It's poverty that exists because poverty exists. It's tragedy that exists because some places are less lucky. Maybe they'll throw out words like corruption, or maybe they'll get so angry about the lack of class and the lack of dignity and the lack of morals that their own ethnic group has. A lot of it is internalized hatred, and then they pass it down to us as children in order to hype up the American dream to us. All these years later, it is 2025, and look at that American dream. That's just how it is, like Danae says in the chat, right? There's no understanding of, the US and the Western Bloc plundered our countries. No understanding of the post-colonial struggle in India. No understanding of the famines, of the massacres that occurred in the Indian subcontinent under British rule. No understanding of how American politics caused the massive divide in Korea and devastated both sides of Korea with civil war and with trauma that continues to plague both societies. Just, poverty happened, bad stuff happened, that's just how it is. But now you're here, don't think about that stuff. Well, because you didn't think about that stuff, because you didn't think critically about how these systems work, you've put yourself in a position where now that the system is bold and upfront with just how nasty it is, even though you had all these resources at your disposal, you're still shocked. I can't believe it. I can't believe this is who we are. I can't believe this country is this way. How? You had books, you had resources, you had time, you had education, you had class privileges. You could have read some books. And so all these things that made us quote unquote woke and that made us a little bit, too woke for our friend groups years ago, all these things that made us overthinkers years ago are things that we can reflect on now as progressives, whatever your progressive affiliation might be, especially as socialists and communists. They now are these gifts to us because they taught us who we should and shouldn't align with. They taught us what to prepare for. They taught us about what was going on the whole time. We didn't live in this delusion. that once Obama got elected, that America was back on track and better than ever, that racism had ended. We didn't live with this delusion that this was the land of the free and the home of the brave, and anybody could immigrate here and make a great life for themselves at no cost. This is the kind of thing we are taught to avoid, and yet if we really avoided it, we would have been in the same situations that an Usha Vance found herself in. It's a nightmare scenario. And this is one of those things that we should reflect on at the end of 2025. My last point. What parts of the American dream are we still holding on to? A lot of the internet can be extremely dogmatic and extremely judgmental and toxic. And so it's easy to get discouraged about every single thing that's part of your life. But ultimately, we do still have the situation we have. We do still have to do something about it. And that means we have to engage in all types of political organization, for better and for worse, with flaws, with strengths and weaknesses. That also means, though, that we have to interrogate ourselves and ask, like, how much money do I really think I need to make? How much assimilation do I really think I need to do? Is it really that I'm a failure because I didn't go to law school? Or am I lucky that I didn't end up like Usha Vance? Is it really that I let my parents down? Or did they, it's not their fault ultimately, but did they lead me in the wrong way? And even as we think about the Democratic Party, how much of the institution are we still holding on to spiritually, hoping that it can just get itself back on track, give us another Obama, and cruise to another 8 years of delusion? Or are we ready to just be pragmatic, to understand the situation for what it is, and to not sacrifice ourselves to the system? That's what Usha Vance is. She's a sacrifice. Same with Vivek, Bobby Jindal, Nikki Haley, all of the classics, the classic, Brahmin folks who settled in America, immigrated to America, and moved up the careerist ladder. All these folks are just sacrifices to fascism. They exist to legitimize it, to legitimate it. They exist to add plausible deniability. Well, we can't be racist when we're deporting all these people. We can't be racist when we're saying all these hideously racist things because Usha Vance is over here. And Usha Vance is sitting there like, hair graying and all, lying to everybody through her teeth that she's in this even-sided marriage and she's cool with the way things are, playing the game. Well, there's no more game to be played. In 2026, you're going to watch people continue to play this game, and it's going to be baffling to you. That's how you're going to be feeling. It's going to be baffling to you to see people still try to be careerists and opportunists and assimilationist. It's going to be baffling to you to see someone like Usha Vance emerge. It's going to be baffling to you. It's going to look weirder and less sensible than ever because it's never been clearer that this game doesn't work. It's broken. The jig is up. And educating ourselves and collaborating with our community is the way that we get through, is the way that we achieve the real dream, which is a sensible, dignified life with the resources that we need to live and to have some degree of joy, some degree of mobility, some degree of agency. Anyway, that's my talk.